Hello again, everybody, and welcome inside the VIBELAND Sports Studios. It's episode 34 of VIBELAND Sports. I'm Todd Miller, joined by Kelby Peterson and Casady Fletcher. We've got a lot to talk about. Did the Sooners' national title hopes go down in a flame in Manhattan, Kansas? OSU's defense resurrected from the dead. Upset win at Iowa State. We talked the Thunder, Tiger Woods, and the NFL trade deadline. All of that coming up, as well as our guest this week, Brady Trantham, the co-host of OKC-82 Podcast that can be heard on the Franchise Podcast Network. Brady also does work for the Franchise Radio as well, 107.7 FM in Oklahoma City. You can follow him at Brady Does Sports. Hi, guys.
How's it going, Todd?
Good. Can't complain.
Heck yeah.
If you like cold weather.
Yeah, I can't
Cold
complain about
and
that
rainy
yet.
and
Cold and rainy.
golly.
We just skipped fall, didn't we? Just went
blah.
right into winter.
Although I saw a forecast earlier this week that said from about the middle part of November on, it is going to be unseasonably warm.
Okay.
Hey,
So
I'll
if you
take
like
it.
cold, enjoy it while you can. Thank goodness we're going to get a little more mild temperatures in the back half of November.
I would just like at least more than, I don't know, a week of fall.
Be nice, wouldn't it? It would be nice. All right, guys, let's talk about college football. We'll begin in Manhattan, Kansas, the Sooners in Kansas State. I was worried about this game. I'm not going to lie. Kansas State is not a flashy football team. They're not going to dazzle you with their athleticism, but they're very well coached. They don't beat themselves. And I think you could make a point the Sooners were not that well coached on Saturday, and they did beat themselves. Casady, a very poor performance by Lincoln Riley's club.
Oh, man. I mean, it'd be different if Kansas State was some team that had been putting up big numbers against everybody all season. They're not all that great. They just came out and outplayed the crap out of the Sooners on Saturday, and OU did not look like they were ready to play. They were just kind of going through the motions out there, and when you go through the motions against a team that's a quality opponent, that's your outcome right there.
From what I can gather, and I had another commitment on Saturday, so I couldn't watch the football game, but I've read things and watched some things. From what I could gather, I think OU just walked in thinking Kansas State was going to bow down and fall at their feet and roll over and take a beating. That didn't happen. The Wildcats relished the fact that they beat a crap-talking Sooner team on Saturday in Manhattan. I think they took offense to OU's attitude up there. And you're right, when you're not ready to play in this league, especially on the defensive side of the football, there's about any team in the league that can beat you.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not going to beat up OU's defense and say they're a fraud. They're not a fraud. They're much, much better than they have been. Schematically, they are much, much better than they have been. They are much more well coached than they have been. But the bottom line, Casady, is Sooner fans, and Alex Grinch and Lincoln Riley know this. This program has got to vastly improve the talent and the depth on the defensive side of the football. There's 3, maybe 4 guys on that defense that could play on Sundays right now.
Yes.
Back in the good old days, there were numerous guys. Most of them were going to be drafted on the defensive side of the football. The talent on that side has taken a dip. And now it's up to the coaching staff to get it back because they are simply not good enough right now, even as well coached as they are by Grinch, to just show up and stop people.
Yeah, and look, it doesn't help when one of your best defensive backs in Parnell Motley goes out in the first quarter for kicking
Silly.
somebody. I mean, just for something completely ignorant. Just no reason for that whatsoever. He should have been thrown out. I'm glad he was. But there's no reason for him to do that in the first place. And then for the rest of the game, that's one man short in that secondary. And so then everything's just off a little bit. When you're not that deep as it is, one guy being out of sync can affect a whole defense.
And I heard they had only traveled with like 3 or 4 players. I might be exaggerating with 4 in their secondary.
You're
so
right.
They didn't travel
You're right.
deep for some reason that I haven't heard yet. But I didn't think that was a good idea either. And then again, especially what a bad decision if you're traveling that light with players.
Well, here's the big question I ask. Did Kansas State knock Oklahoma out of any hopes of reaching the college football semifinals? Or will it be the Big 12 that ultimately knocks the Sooners out of the college football playoffs? If and only if OU can run the table.
I think that the Big 12 was already kind of knocking the Sooners out of the playoff when you saw them back up in back-to-back weeks in the AP poll when they were undefeated. I mean, it was just the fact that they were putting teams from the SEC and the Big Ten in there ahead of the Sooners, which at the time, it was all going to sort itself out. OU could only take care of themselves and the schedule they had in front of them. They couldn't do that. Now you got to have some help. But I don't know who is going to be a big signature win that's going to give OU a boost in the rankings.
I'll tell you who's going to help them, and it's a team that you would have never thought. They're going to play Baylor in Waco in a few weeks, and Baylor very well is going to be a top 10 team.
It's the only hope for the Sooners.
It's the only hope for the Sooners. I'm going to tell you right now, this dented OU's hopes. I don't think it killed it, the loss, but I think the conference is going to do them in. Because I'm going to tell you right now, with as much parity as there are in this league, with Texas continuing to choke, Texas is not back.
No.
Until they get back and this conference gets a better national reputation, OU or anybody else is almost going to have to run the table. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think OU, with one loss playing in the Big 12 Conference, is better than a one-loss team perhaps out of the Big 10, and I certainly don't think they're better than a one-loss team out of the SEC. I think the Kansas State game and the lack of the strength of the Big 12 Conference guys may have ensured once more there's going to be two SEC teams in the Final Four.
I agree with everything that you said. Before this conversation, really, I was all in that the Sooners had, they had no problem getting back into the college football playoff. But you guys have made some excellent points. And looking at the schedule right now, have you got the Big 12 Conference has really just beat itself up. I mean, it's not.
They're devouring themselves.
Exactly. I mean, right now, third place is 3-2. Iowa State's 3-2 in the conference. Texas is 3-2, and then the teams that have had byes, Kansas State's 2-2, TCU's 2-2 in the conference. So these are all like 2-loss teams already. They're just the whole conference is assaulting each other. Where OU, like you said, had to run the table. That was their only chance of getting in, and for sure,
it was the only comfortable way that they could be assured.
And yeah, it's going to be tough to see Baylor still being undefeated. Like you guys said, here in a couple weeks, that may be their only shot. They've got to blow Baylor out because, again, that win against Texas doesn't look so good anymore, guys. That was a huge win. That was their signature victory of the year, and now it's not looking so great.
I truly thought OU might stumble this year. In fact, if you go back to our preview, I said they were going to go 11-1. I thought it would be Texas that would beat them in the Cotton Bowl. OU would avenge that later. I still think it's a pitfall in Stillwater. I don't care what anybody says. I think OU wins that game, but that's now a very dangerous game. And I thought truly, after OU got by Texas, I thought their one chance for a slip-up, really, might be in Waco against Baylor.
Yes. Looking at the way that the Bears have played this season, they have been a huge surprise to me, at least, and to, I think, a lot of the college football landscape on just how good they were. Everyone kind of still saw them in this rebuild mode, and they're not supposed to be this good just yet. It was coming, and that program was getting back to where it was supposed to be. But my gosh, Baylor, they're going to be gearing up for that OU game, and if OU goes in there and travels with the defense that they took to Manhattan, then the Sooners are just out of even probably making the Big 12 championship at that point.
I don't see that happening again because Lincoln Riley and his staff are going to get their attention. And you know what? They have their attention now for 2 weeks because the Sooners fortunately have, I think, a much-needed bye week after that disappointment in Kansas State. I still think OU's a really good football team. I really do. But, again, I think the strength of the conference and the way they're devouring each other, as KP said, is really going to ultimately be the Sooners' undoing.
And right now, who would you guys, if you had to pick right now, Big 12 championship, who's playing in it right now? I mean, the easy answer is probably OU Baylor, but that's probably the right answer. But that's not what anybody thought a few weeks ago.
Or K-State.
K-State, I like that thought too, Todd.
I don't know who does Baylor lose again to, because they'd have to get 2 losses, right?
They could lose to Texas, I suppose.
Oh, okay, I forgot
Texas
that they haven't played yet.
Texas and OU. So that would be 2.
So there's the 2, and that would put that'd be crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, I think OU's a lock for the Big 12 championship, but it's who they're playing against. And, this Baylor game coming up, we could see a rematch in a few weeks after that. So,
well, that's our thoughts on OU K-State. Let's move up to Ames, Iowa. A huge win for Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State. KP, you had to like this for several different reasons. They responded after a really disappointing 2-game losing streak, and the defense, for crying out loud, was the one that was the savior for the Cowboys.
Exactly. I saw the best tweet I saw. Somebody said, because it was homecoming at Iowa State, and the weekend before was homecoming in Stillwater. It said 2 weeks in a row, OSU's defense ruins somebody's homecoming. We're just really happy that this time it was the other team's homecoming instead of our own, like they had done previously.
What's your thoughts on the Cowboys? Spencer Sanders played a much more solid game. He made better decisions.
I was really happy with the response. Like I had said last week, you hope that Gundy was able to coach the guys up after this break and come out strong, and they did. And they did it on the road, and they faced some serious adversity, and they responded. I thought Iowa State kind of folded, which was great to see because usually I'm watching my team fold this year, and that was not the case. So in the fourth quarter, the game's tied. Iowa State's kind of driving. They've got all the momentum, and they throw a pick six. It was the defense responded. The drive after that, Iowa State's driving again. They've got a chance to respond, and again, another interception by the defense. So the defense stood tall, and it was great to see. It's the best performance by far by them all season, and they did what they've been needing to do, and that's create turnovers. Now, I got to be honest, guys, if you watch the game, they were just in the right place at the right time. It was 2 really bad throws right to the defenders. I mean, it hit them in their chest. They didn't have to reach for it. So, bad throws by the quarterback, but we capitalized. So I'm happy to see that. And another thing that really made me excited was a decision that Spencer Sanders made. It was, I don't know how many people caught this, but late in the third quarter, he throws what I thought was a terrible, I think actually it was in the fourth quarter. There was a terrible, terrible interception. It's 3rd and long. He's rolling out. He's trying to make a play. Like I said last week, he still thinks he's this high school quarterback playing against high school kids in Texas. Throws it across his body, interception. In that situation, what you have to do is you have to throw it away or you have to take the sack. You've got to know that you can't make every single play, even though he wants to, and it's hard to tell a freshman that. The next series, exact same situation happens, except this time he's rolling out to his left. It's 3rd and long. What does he do? He takes the sack. And what happens on the sack? When they grab him by his face mask, 15-yard penalty, 1st down. It's just a example. I'm sure the coaches took him on the side and said, hey, this is what you do. You don't make that throw. He listened, he learned, and the next series he was rewarded. Now, that's not going to happen every time. Sometimes you just take the sack and punt it away, but I really liked his decision-making. I was really impressed with that maturity and that growth in that split, 5-minute period during the game. So, where he's going.
Here's what I also think is a problem for Iowa State. Iowa State no longer is Iowa State of the schedule. People get up for Iowa State because
preseason a lot of people picked them really high.
For the most part, they've had a number next to their name all season long, and they did against Oklahoma State. They're in a position as a program they're not really accustomed to being in. They've always been the hunter. Now they're somewhat the huntee, and that makes a big, big difference. And I think that's why you've seen Iowa State struggle some this year. They were lucky in week 1 to beat Northern Iowa. They had Iowa at home, which would have been a great win for them. Excuse me. Didn't get that done. They have a chance to knock off what's been one of the top programs of the Big 12 Conference for the last decade. At home, homecoming. They don't get it done against a struggling Oklahoma State team. So do you agree, Casady? I think there's a difference in being the Iowa State of old and the Iowa State now that has some expectations.
There is. When you're playing that underdog role, you're okay with a couple of losses throughout there because you're just playing the agent of chaos role in the conference, and that's kind of what they've been the last several years. And they're pretty good, but they're not great. You never really think that they're going to have a chance to win a college football playoff or anything like that, or even win a Big 12 championship. And right now, I think that they did look at some of their own press clippings, and they're going out there, and I think that all of a sudden, like you're saying, Todd, when you're hunted, that changes things. People are gearing up. They're coming in ready to play you. They're not going to overlook you. You don't have that opportunity to just sneak past somebody anymore and get a nice win. Everybody knows it's hard to play in Ames at night. So teams get up and get ready for it now. So even your biggest advantage is kind of taken away from you.
I will tell you this. There's been a lot better Oklahoma State teams go up to Ames, Iowa, and play Iowa State teams that weren't near this good.
Agreed.
And bad things happened.
Don't remind me.
So,
I still have nightmares.
I know. I'm just telling you.
2011.
I'm backing Casady's point here to say that
was a great
bad
point.
things usually happen for
Yes.
really good teams going into Ames.
It can be really tough, a hard place to play, and right now there's just something a little off about them. They're playing scared. I don't know. I think is probably what it boils down to. They just don't look good.
Good, coming up in our second segment, we're going to talk Thunder basketball with Brady Trantham, the co-host of OKC-82 Podcast on the Franchise Podcast Network. He's also the Thunder insider for 107.7 FM, The Franchise. Brady will join us coming up in our next segment. We will tell you what we think about the Thunder in just a moment. I want to remind you about our VIBELAND fan poll question of the week from last week. Las Vegas projected the Thunder to win 32.5 games. Do you think they will do better or worse than that projected total? 59% of you said they're going to win more than 33 ball games. 41% of you, myself included, simply because I think the roster shakeup will happen, said they will not win 33 games. All right, guys, we have a 1-3 sample size to look at. A lot of good, some not so good with this Thunder team. And I think what we've seen in the first 4 games, it's probably fair to say, we're going to see all year long. There's going to be highs. There's going to be wins against teams you go, they have no business beating. And then there's going to be lows like the Washington Wizards game when OKC was a double-digit favorite. That may be the only time all year that happens, and they lost. What's your thoughts from 1-3 start?
This team has been really fun to watch, guys. I gotta say, as a Thunder fan, it's different, it's new, but it really is exciting. Like surprisingly, like I knew I've been trying to like talk myself up and say this team's gonna be fun to watch, but man, they really are. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, let's just call it SGA. That name is so hard. SGA is so fun to watch. I love his scoop shot that he's got. I love the hustle, the moves that he's got. And guys, I'm not saying this to dump on Russell Westbrook because he's my favorite NBA player. I love Russell. But it's really cool to watch every possession where we dribble it down the court and there's multiple passes in a possession. We're getting better jump shots. It's not dribble, screen, jump shot. It's fun to watch the ball move, these guys move, and work Billy's offense. It's exciting to watch.
Well, a lot less ISOs than OKC has seen probably ever.
Yeah.
I mean, going back even to the Russ and KD days, that was just 2 players that were heavy ISO. It kind of reminded me of like what the Rockets looked like last year with CP3 and Harden. You're not going to see any of that going on the Thunder right now. They're going to run that system that Billy has been preaching since he got here. You're finally getting to see it.
Here's what I like about it, guys, and I don't know how many games they're going to win. I hope they continue to be fun all season long because I promise you I can get behind this team win or lose.
Agreed.
I think they're likable guys. I think they've got great character. I think they're going to continue to get better. To me, this season is enjoyable because for the first time almost since Kevin Durant left, we have somewhat peace on the roster. You're not worrying about, is Russell going to resign? This is Paul George's one and only year, or is it in Oklahoma City? Kevin Durant, will he stay? Yeah. It's more about basketball, guys, and not superstars and their pending decisions.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you say that because I remember at the end of last season, we made the same point. Before the PG and Russell stuff went down, we're like, this is like the first offseason where there's no... Like, we've got Russell for the next 5 years.
That's really the only one KP
We've got
since
PG
KD.
for the next 5 years, and then we have the most craziest offseason ever. So we trade Russell. So it's funny that you say that because, yeah, you're absolutely right, Todd. It's kind of calming. There's not a lot of pressure. We're that disruptor team, and I like that role. It's going to be fun to go in and ruin some teams' nights. We're going to beat some teams, like you said, that we're not supposed to. I'd like to get the wins that we're supposed to, though, but I'm not going to jump on them too hard yet because this team's going to grow, and they're going to learn. And what I really, really like, guys, is that our losses, we haven't been blown out. I mean, I would say the Wizards game, the end of the Wizards game was a debacle. I was at it. The offense just shut off. Chris Paul admitted, and that's what I like too after the game. He was like, I was terrible tonight. This was like, I'm embarrassed basically with how I played. And so that game we lost by 12, but we lost by five, and then we won by, oh my gosh, that Golden State game.
Oh, man.
What was that? 28 points is what we won by, and then we lose to the Rockets by 4.
Well, they were up 42 at one point.
That was amazing to watch. Like, how about that? What a weird game. And, like, where we're at as the Thunder team to play a Golden State Warriors team who still has Steph Curry, who still has Draymond Green. And, oh, by the way, they added an amazing shooter from the East, D'Angelo Russell. They added D'Angelo Russell, and we blow them out we're beating them by 40 at one point. Like, what world are we in?
I don't know about you, but just watching that game, even when we were up 15 early, I'm thinking, okay, Golden State's going to make a run.
That's what I kept waiting for.
We're up 25. This thing's going to get tied at some point.
Yep.
And the next time I look up, we're up 35. And I'm going, this ain't your daddy's Golden State Warriors anymore.
Not at
And
all.
the difference with this team is they just don't have the depth. They don't have the Sean Livingston. They don't have the Andre Iguodala. People could talk about KD being gone all they want. That's hogwash. This team won 73 games without Kevin Durant. They won championships without Kevin Durant. You don't have Klay Thompson for the entire year. I just mentioned 2 key cogs that are no longer with the franchise, and the depth is not there.
And they're
They're
1-3.
hurting, guys.
They're 1-3. I got to say, I'm not mad about it. I don't like to see others suffer, but the Warriors, I've been sick of them. Now, do I think they're going to turn around? Yes, but they are 1-3, and I've seen Charles Barkley the other night. In the interview during the game, one of the opening nights, Klay Thompson was sitting up on the panel with him, and Charles Barkley, to his face, said, "I don't think the Warriors are going to make the playoffs."
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to fall that far. They're going to fall that far, but they're not going to be a team with home court advantage in the playoffs.
I don't think
I
they're
agree
better
with
than
that,
7
yeah.
or 8 in the West. I really don't, because they don't play enough defense.
Yeah. It's again, maybe I'm thinking like I do about the Patriots. Maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but you're right, Todd. The defense, they don't play it anymore,
Stinks.
and the depth is not there. We'll see what Steve Kerr can do.
Again, our poll question last week, do you think the Thunder will win over or under 32.5 games as projected by Las Vegas? 59% of you said yes. 41% of you said no. Each week we have a VIBELAND fan poll question of the week. Log on to our Twitter page at VIBELAND Sports. Same address for Instagram. On Facebook, it's VIBELAND Sports. Don't miss a moment of our podcast. Apple Podcasts and Spotify is where you can go to download past episodes or current episodes of VIBELAND Sports. Exciting news, speaking of the NBA. I'm going to give it up to my boy, Bill. Man, this guy came through for us.
Woo.
He came through for us. He's going to start scheduling for some guests for us. Calls me 2 days ago and says, I know we have a guest scheduled for Tuesday, but I can get Terry Stotts, the head coach of the Portland Trailblazers, on. How about that? How about that? Let's give a round of applause to Josh Bill. Good job. This guy's the man. So we have a bonus podcast coming out this week from VIBELAND Sports.
That's right.
Terry Stotts and I visit for about 18 minutes or so.
It was great.
Good stuff.
Head
Ready for
be a
everybody
head
to hear
coach
it.
on VIBELAND, you know? That's pretty impressive.
Pretty sweet.
Since we try to be a family show, I won't tell you or read you the text that KP sent me when I told him he was coming on.
Let's just say that we were all very excited about that.
I think he just said,
Yes,
huh?
right there.
Huh?
Yeah.
What number is this?
Yeah.
All right, coming up, we'll talk more Thunder basketball with Brady Trantham, the co-host of OKC-82 Podcast and the Thunder Insider on 107.7 FM, The Franchise in Oklahoma City. This is episode 34 of VIBELAND Sports, a weekly presentation of VIBELAND, Inc. And welcome inside the VIBELAND studios. I'm Todd Miller. We're talking Oklahoma City Thunder basketball today with Thunder Insider Brady Trantham, who is the co-host of OKC-82 Podcast on the Franchise Podcast Network. Brady, thanks for coming on with us.
Hey, thank you, Todd. Appreciate it. It's always fun to talk basketball. We're just a week into it, but it feels like it's been basketball season year round. So just starting to get back into the rhythm of the regular season, so it's fun.
Okay, you and I had lunch today, and I found out about your past. It's kind of interesting because you're a history major who didn't know what he wanted to do. You worked at a bank, and all of a sudden you find yourself now a full-time member of the media covering the Oklahoma City Thunder. Tell us about that circuitous route that you took.
Yeah, I was a military brat growing up, so had to move probably a lot more than your usual kid growing up in the state. So I had to constantly catch back up with every school I had to move to. And so by the time I got to college, I really didn't have a chance to think about like what I wanted to do, like actual things that you're supposed to be thinking about once you're turning 18. Like I didn't take any college courses in high school. I didn't really take anything fun outside of your basic courses. So I got to college, had no idea what I wanted to do. So history is my favorite subject. And if I'm going to be in college, I need to make good enough grades while I spend the rest of my time partying and working. So history it was. And then by the time I graduated, I had to decide what I wanted to do. Still couldn't figure it out. And then finally, after I'd already graduated, Chuck Cheney, who runs ThunderDigest.com, offered me a little spot with them. Started writing as a hobby and started to like it. And now I'm here. Once you start making whatever you're doing, if you make it your job, if you take it seriously, you can do anything you want. So, I mean, if I can do something, then anybody can.
All right, let's talk about this Thunder team. Let's go back to the preseason. In a way, has this maybe been more enjoyable for you covering this team because it's strictly about basketball and who's not going to re-sign or who may re-sign? It's strictly about this team and the development of young talent.
Well, I mean, for me, it's enjoyable just because I don't know how this movie's going to end. Mm-hmm. Now, if Russell Westbrook and Paul George, didn't request trade, if Paul George didn't request a trade to go to LA, and this was basically the same team with just a few minor additions and Mike Muscala and Alec Burks from the offseason onto that same team, I know how that movie ends. They're one of the most talented rosters in the league, and so every week on our show on 107.7, I've got to tell everybody, yeah, it's a talented team that should contend for Western Conference Finals, even though in the back of my mind, I understand it's going to be a miracle if they get out of the first round because the way they play basketball just isn't conducive to winning, particularly from Russell Westbrook's heroics and his ISO ball. Paul George is an injury concern all the time, so you don't know what you're going to get out of him. So from that perspective, it's just exciting because I don't know what to expect with this team. So every day is new. I don't already know how it's going to end. And like you said, with the development of young players, it is fun to see guys younger in their careers where you can see, okay, they're making mistakes here and here and here. And then once you get to game 42 and 62 up till game 82, you see if they've made improvements or not. And it's just kind of fun to be a part of that ride.
Well, I think we can say that we've seen improvements and maybe some steps back in the first 4 games. I think if I would have had you on a couple of weeks ago and said, okay, I think 1-3 is certainly doable for this franchise, you would have taken that. But they've done a much different route to 1-3, haven't they? Knocking off Golden State, destroying Golden State, and then losing to a team that they were a double-digit favorite at home in Washington.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Russell Westbrook team with Carmelo Anthony and Paul George, where they would beat the teams like the Warriors and the Milwaukee Bucks, and then they would lose to the Wizards. But, of course, this isn't the same Golden State team that we've grown accustomed to over the last few years. They're bad, especially defensively. That Golden State team is terrible on defense. But the Thunder certainly earned that victory, and it was the culmination of a lot of things that they had done well in those first 2 games. Like they would play good offense for a quarter. They would play pretty much good defense. They're a top 5 defensive rating team in the league, and it's only 4 or 5 games in for the league, so the sample size is too small. But thus far, they've proven to be a very consistently good defense. But yeah, the Golden State win was great for the fan base, of course, for all the reasons that we're all pretty aware of. But you look at the Utah loss, the Wizards loss, they kind of make sense when you think about this roster being a bunch of young guys, a bunch of inexperienced guys, and a bunch of guys who haven't played with each other. They started really slow on the road in Utah. Okay, that's pretty normal for a team with those categories. They ended up tying the game at 83 with about a few minutes left against Washington at home. It was amazing that they even tied the game because they were down 11 at that point. And then the Wizards finished on a 14-2 run. Well, a team filled with young guys, they're going to have problems. They're going to make a lot of mistakes when it comes to crunch time in the NBA. Those are one of the things that I talked about earlier, where 20, 30 games into the season, if they're presented with the same situation, maybe they do finish it out. And then if you're a Thunder fan, you could say all those mistakes in the Wizards game, it's now paid off.
Chris Paul, he certainly has a lot of tread on the tires, but certainly for a young team is a very important piece, I think, right now. Do you sense that he is really embracing his role of what the Thunder want from him in however long he will be here?
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually talking to Chisholm Holland today on the OKC-82 podcast that we recorded today. I think his give a crap meter is very, very low. Now, he's a professional, and he's going to do all that he can to win basketball games and do his job. And I've seen that thus far in 4 games. But what makes Chris Paul so good, what makes him a Hall of Fame point guard, is that he's a grinding general of a personality. He will lord himself over a basketball floor and at times really combat his teammates. Now, maybe it's because he's surrounded by a bunch of young guys. Maybe he just gets the sense in the locker room that won't really work with these personalities. It could be that, or it could be him just going, I don't necessarily want to be here. I'm going to make the best of it, but I'm not going to give my full 100% Chris Paul effort. And in so doing, he had a bunch of average outings and one terrible outing, and it was that Wizards game where he had no fingerprints on the game whatsoever. You look at the box score, he did nothing. You watch the game over again, he did nothing. And I don't know if it's because he wants to try and increase his trade value to kind of wipe away the stigma that he has that I just described of him being a grinding personality. Maybe in his mind that increases his trade value so that other opposing teams that are contending for titles right now could say, okay, this new version of Chris Paul could seamlessly transition into our locker room now. I don't know if that's the case. I haven't seen the Chris Paul that I've watched over the years as an NBA fan. I haven't seen that with Thunder just yet.
Do you think he has been, to at least this point, a good mentor for SGA?
Oh, definitely. That is one thing that I'm confident that he's doing a good job of, is just being not just a positive mentor in practice or on the floor, but off the floor for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I mean, Shai always talks about it. We always see those two specifically together after practice whenever the Thunder lets us out onto the floor to go talk to the players and Billy Donovan. They're always together. I mean, Chris is very vocal about how he views Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to us. He's vocal about it on social media. That I think that's pretty transparent with Chris Paul. So, and I've asked Billy Donovan a few times just about what Chris has specifically done in a leadership role for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. A lot of it is just kind of the cliche lead by example, but you see it when they throw the 3-guard lineup out there. It kind of hampers SGA because it takes away opportunities, but it does give him an opportunity to learn, like to develop other things with his game offensively. It does give him that opportunity, and then he gets to also watch Chris Paul work. And those are going to be things that are going to help him, like, no matter what, moving forward.
Brady Trantham, the co-host of OKC-82 Podcast on the Franchise Podcast Network and Thunder Insider on 107.7 at Oklahoma City, is our guest. How long do you think CP3's here? How long do you think before, I don't want to say the fire sale, but trades start to be made?
Yeah, I mean, December has always been like the earliest trade date that we've all had in mind, because that's, basically since June 30th, when half the league got traded, half the league signed new deals. Half the league basically can't be traded until I think December 16th. And so basically, if there is a franchise out there that has like an understanding with Sam Presti, or that Sam Presti has an inkling that, okay, I can make this deal work, mid-December is basically the earliest point where that can start. Now, I don't think it's going to be that quick because of the Chris Paul concerns. He has a very stupid contract. He's old, and he's an injury concern. So it's going to come down to not just a franchise that is going to contend for titles, but maybe a franchise that thinks they should be contending for titles, but maybe has started off slow and they feel they need to like an injection boost. And Chris Paul certainly fits that. So that hypothetical team would be a little bit more desperate and then more willing to, okay, Oklahoma City, here, take a rookie and take a first round pick, or take these 2 first round picks. And then Sam Presti would be like, okay, sweet, cool. So it's going to be kind of an annoying process for Thunder fans, because as soon as it's available, like the possibility of trading Chris Paul, Everybody's going to be staying up late. Everybody's going to be waiting for Adrian Wojnarowski to throw out a Woj bomb. It's going to be, I hate to say like the easy answer, it's going to be basically anytime from mid-December until the trade deadline. But I am of the belief that Chris Paul and Danilo Gallinari do not finish the season with the Thunder this season.
Are those the only two, Brady, that you see being moved? Because I think about almost every part of this team is certainly expendable.
Well, I think a guy like Dennis Schroeder, like he played so well that his trade value is through the roof right now. He doesn't necessarily fit the trajectory of this team in terms of timing, in terms of what the Thunder want to do as a team overall. Dennis Schroeder signed with this team with a completely different role and a completely different understanding. So it's not necessarily the Thunder's fault or Dennis Schroeder's fault. He just doesn't necessarily fit moving forward. So he's a guy that can be a potential nice trade piece for them. A guy like Nerlens Noel kind of fits under the same criteria as Dennis Schroeder, where he signed with this team under a different understanding. Now, the weird thing with Nerlens is because he signed 2 back-to-back vet minimums, he kind of has a no trade clause. It's kind of a weird loophole. Now, he can waive it if the Thunder say, hey, we're going to trade you to this team. If Nerlens is like, cool, I'll get more of an opportunity to start there, or get more minutes, then he can waive it. So he's a guy that I've kind of circled as a potential trade piece. I don't think Steven Adams is going to be traded. I think it would be silly just from a culture standpoint, just from a foundational leader standpoint. And then, like, this is coming from a guy who I've been very disappointed with his play thus far in these first 4 games.
I was going to ask you, Brady, what's going on with him? He just does not look like himself. Is he hurt?
Yeah, I mean, the Thunder announced that after the Houston loss that he had a left knee contusion. I have no doubt that he's hurt. He is always going to be dealing with some type of injury. It makes sense. He's 7 feet tall. He's huge, and he runs the floor. Like, it's a lot of body. It's a lot of mass to be banging knees and banging elbows and chests and everything. But at the same time, these little nagging injuries shouldn't be making him so indecisive with the ball in his hands when he gets more touches. It shouldn't make him so timid when he's under the rim. It shouldn't make a guy like PJ Tucker dominate him for an entire half. PJ Tucker's a good player, make no mistake about it. Steven Adams is a better player. There's no place for that. So with Steven, I think it's just a combination of his contract and then injuries. So what his contract does is it gives Thunder fans an expectation of he should be playing at a certain level. I just never think that he's never going to be an all-star player. I've never thought of him as an all-star. I've always thought of him as a high-end level role player. And if that's your expectation, then he's been relatively at that level. But even from the second half of last season to these first 4 games, I've been very disappointed with it. And I thought last year, I think I wrote about it for thefranchiseok.com. I thought he plateaued. I thought he has plateaued as his career. I don't think he's going to get any better. And it's either going to stay like this for the next few years, or it's just going to get progressively worse. So even having said that, I think the Thunder should still keep him.
And I think a lot of people beat up Oklahoma City for giving him that type of contract. He is overpaid. But at the time he got that contract, Brady, and you and I talked about this earlier today, you and I could have made $10 million. They were giving out mega deals like cups of water. And he just happened to be up for a contract at the right time.
Yeah, and if the Thunder had let him go into restricted free agency, I mean, somebody was going to throw a ton of money at him, because at the time he was coming off of that very impressive Western Conference Finals match with the Warriors. Everybody thought so highly of him. Everybody thought that he was going to be like maybe a fringe all-star. Like, he was an exciting piece on the potential market. So somebody was going to give him money. It just happened to be the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I don't, like you said, I don't blame the Thunder for doing it. It makes sense. And a lot of it was just kind of a reaction to, we just lost Kevin Durant for nothing. We have Russell Westbrook going into the final year of his deal. We need to try and build around him. And Steven Adams is a good piece to build around Russell Westbrook. And, they also gave Victor Oladipo a ton of money. And a lot of people laughed at that and said, you're never going to be able to trade him. And he's not as good as his contract dictates. Well, the Thunder traded him for Paul George. So anytime you hear untradeable, like in regards to like Chris Paul's contract or even Steven Adams' contract, that's one thing Sam Presti is very good at, is making the impossible possible in terms of trading untradeable contracts.
Brady Trantham of the franchise 107.7 FM in Oklahoma City and co-host of OKC-82 Podcast is our guest. We're talking Oklahoma City Thunder basketball. Has the window closed? Is there no room for Nader on this club anymore?
Yeah. I hate to say it because Abdul Nader, he's a great guy. He's really fun to talk to. He's got a great personality, but I just don't see it. I don't see an NBA future with him. And whether it's on this team or on any other team, because what is he good at? What do we always hear? What do we see like as media when we go into practice and see these guys shooting around in an open gym? He's one of the best shooters on the team. The guy is a sniper. He's got a great shot. He's got a great release, everything that you could possibly want. But in the situations where he's put on the floor to basically just do that, he's not been able to perform. And then when he's asked to do other things because he's on the floor for a little bit longer, like putting the ball on the floor, trying to create, it just never works. And I think at best, and this would be like Sam Presti pulling off some type of another heist trade, Abdul Nader becomes basically an extra piece that he can dangle in front of a team and say, hey, like, I need to get rid of Chris Paul, but here, have Abdul Nader because he's a great shooter. Look at all this film of him, like, making all these open shots. Like, look at all this stuff. You need a shooter. That is the best case scenario for the Thunder in terms of Abdul Nader, because I don't see any positive play out of him for the Thunder in terms of him helping the Thunder win games in the future anytime
From
soon.
what I've heard about Nader, if you were to walk into the Thunder practice facility, you would think the guy was all NBA. Is that correct? I mean, he hits everything and does everything right in practice.
Yeah, you'd think he was a 3-point champion or something. Like it's incredible. He was the best 3-point shooter on the team in an open gym in practice last year. And that was a team with Paul George, who was averaging about 10 or 11 3-pointers and hitting 44% of them. So it was incredible to see just the difference between him and Paul George or Russell Westbrook or whoever else was launching threes. I mean, even Steven Adams looks really good shooting threes in practice. But then again, we lose sight and we lose track about how, like, Andre Robertson's trash at shooting. But if you just played him one-on-one in an open gym, all he'd have to do is he would just have to stand behind the 3-point line. And he would beat you in 5 minutes because he's an NBA player. We lose sight. Like, even guys that we think suck are very good by themselves in an open gym. Abdul Nader kind of falls under that category.
Speaking of Andre Robertson, what's going on with him? Is he ever going to play? If he does, will he ever even be close to the type player he used to be?
Well, I'm very happy to see the Thunder invented a new load management term, return to play management. I don't even really know what that means. I will say I think we're going to see Andre Robertson soon. I don't think that the Thunder are being facetious when they're saying we're trying to build his body back up to be able to take the rigors of being a physical defender in the NBA, because they don't want this to be like an Alex Abrinas situation where, like, if you guys remember Alex Abrinas last year, he would come back randomly with no fanfare, no announcement. He would just come back, and then he wouldn't play for 12 games. Yeah. Then he would play 2 games in a row, and then he would stop playing for an entire month. The Thunder don't want that with Andre Robertson. When he comes back, they want him back in the rotation. They don't want it to be a question of, okay, he played 26 minutes last night. What can he play tomorrow night? They want it to just be, he's back on the team, boom, no more questions asked. So from that standpoint, I think they're taking the right approach of being extra careful and just waiting until he might be over ready to come back and play and make a positive impact. So they don't really need him at this point. They're a pretty good defensive team without him. They've got Terrence Ferguson. They've got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They've got a lot of length on this team as is. And so they have the luxury of time. They have the luxury of a lot of practice and a lot of game time for Andre Robertson to basically come back.
All right, Brady, we've talked about parts of this team that may be expendable, may be available for trade. 3 guys that I think certainly are off limits that as a Thunder fan, I'm looking forward to see their development. The rookie Darius Bazely, SGA obviously, and then Hamidou Diallo. The world got introduced to him as a dunk champion. Now Thunder fans are getting introduced to him and his ceiling as far as a basketball player is concerned.
Yeah, like when people talk about the future of this team, they'll of course talk about SGA. They'll talk about Darius Bazely because he's the lone rookie on the team that the team drafted. And then they'll probably even mention Steven Adams just because he's such a fan favorite and a beloved figure in Oklahoma City. But people really sleep on Hamidou Diallo for the reasons you just kind of talked about. He was just a fun athlete to watch play basketball last year, and he won the slam dunk competition. He has a lot of stuff to work on, like with his jump shot, defense. I mean, all these things. But I think of all the players on the team, he's made the most improvement. And I went to Las Vegas in July and saw them play in a summer league. And I was basically looking at the wrong things with Hamidou Diallo, because I kind of left summer league thinking like, okay, like I know he improved, but it wasn't the type of improvement I was looking for. And all I was really looking for was just his jump shot. And while the jump shot still needs a little bit of work, he's shooting 16%. I think he's only taken 7 threes in 4 games, but he's still shooting 16%. His body control, his ability to put the ball on the floor, and his touch has improved so much. It's incredible the amount of improvement he's made. And it's giving me a little bit of optimism for his game moving forward, because he's going to have nothing but those opportunities as the spark off the bench. He's just going to be asked to get a bunch of trash points. Hamidou Diallo is good at that. In the meantime, he can work on his defense, because he's going to be asked to be defending higher end level players than he was accustomed to as a rookie. So he's going to have to develop in that respect. And his jump shot is going to come through practice and through reps. And he's going to have plenty of those reps now with a much less, exciting of a team in terms of expectations. So Diallo is a guy I'm definitely happy for and excited to watch. And SGA, I mean, I'll say like he made improvements from his rookie year last year to now. But I think a lot of it mainly stems from the fact that he was the 3rd, 4th, and sometimes 5th option with the Clippers, and now he's the number 1 or number 2 option with the Thunder. So he's going to score more points. He's going to have more shot attempts. He's going to have more assist numbers. Like all of his numbers are going to be higher. I just don't know how much improvement he's made compared to a guy like Hamidou Diallo.
Is Gilgeous-Alexander the next superstar on this team?
Oh, no question. I mean, SGA is you ask opposing players. Donovan Mitchell gave an unprompted shout out after the Thunder loss last Wednesday. Bradley Beal did the same thing in the Wizards locker room. I mean, everybody can see it. SGA is going to be an all-star. Probably not this year, and maybe not even next year. Next year, he might be a guy that's considered to be an all-star level talent, but because he plays in the Western Conference, because of how all the all-star voting works, he might not make it. But he's going to be a guy that's going to be able to score enough points to be an all-star. He's going to be a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands in crunch time a lot. So he's going to have a lot of opportunities to showcase his talent. He is the easiest bet to be the next all-star in Oklahoma City. But, don't sleep on Darius Bazely. I really like what I saw out of him in Summer League, and I have not been disappointed with him in just 4 games in the regular season or in the preseason. Like I really like his game. I like the types of mistakes he makes, and I like the type of good plays that he makes. He plays good basketball.
One of the things that I talked to you about today at lunch is this is a whole different world for Oklahoma City basketball fans, because in 11 years, really with the exception of the first year when the team just was not playoff worthy, we've had playoff caliber teams here and been in the playoffs 9 of 11 seasons. Welcome to big-time professional sports. Is that the advice you would give to Thunder fans, is that this just is the way professional sports, especially in a small market, works?
I mean, definitely. I've said it a few times on the radio. I've said it a few times on Twitter. To all those Thunder fans that, clap back at Supersonics fans whenever they would hate on the Thunder. If you were a Thunder fan that said, hey, Seattle fan, you should have just gone to your games. You should have paid the extra buck to help build a new arena if you wanted to keep them. This is now your opportunity to prove that you are not a hypocrite, because the team is not going to be as good as they have been over that decade that you talked about. It's not going to be the same level of expectation, and it's going to be hard to see your team, while they're certainly exciting and there's a lot of potential, not just with the team, but in terms of like the future draft assets that Sam Presti was able to get. It's still very hard to watch your team lose over and over and over again. It's still hard to see your team fight back in a 4th quarter, tie it, and then lose in the final minute. It's hard to watch that. So this is your opportunity, Thunder fan, to prove that you aren't a hypocrite. If you were the ones that were hating on Seattle fans, like, still show up to the games and be excited for the future.
Telling you, that is the best said statement I've heard. Man, that was great. Sam Presti, how do you think he uses all these draft picks? I mean, he's obviously not going to draft, I don't think, 13 players, but does he flip them for a big name guy?
Yeah, it's so hard to prognosticate at this point, because so much of it is going to depend on not just where the Thunder are positioned in the draft just from their own merit, but where the draft picks are from the Heat, from the Clippers, from Houston, where those draft picks are going to be positioned as those years come by. And then also what teams are ahead of them in the draft, because there might be a team that doesn't necessarily need to get the surefire day one guy because they might have that position already sealed up on their roster. So many factors are going to be involved with it. So, I mean, we looked at Tankathon today, Chisholm Holland and I, earlier today. Tankathon currently has the Thunder getting the sixth. If the season ended today, they would have the sixth pick, and they are projected to get RJ Hampton, the guy that plays for the New Zealand Breakers, who's an exceptional talent. He didn't necessarily have the best showing when they came to Oklahoma City a few weeks ago, but the talent is certainly there. But that's the type of name that the Thunder could potentially get if they're that high in the lottery. But like you said, Presti does have the option to just try and seduce another franchise. Like, hey, we've got 2 or 3, top 19, top 20 picks. Do you want them for the number 2 pick? And basically try to do what New Orleans was able to do this past offseason.
Is this the threshold of pain for Thunder fans this year? Does it start to go upward quickly after this year?
Man, that's a good question. I want to say, man, I don't even know. I want to say, like, I want to believe that Thunder fans are, I know that it's a young fan base, but they've been through so much that they're just kind of educated by fire at this point. So everyone's very well aware of like where the team is right now, what the expectations should be, and when you should be excited. It's not necessarily this year. It's probably not even next year, but the year after that. Just always have the optimism that the future is going to be better.
Vegas has Oklahoma City at 32.5 wins. I say Oklahoma City slightly under that, just because of the unknown who's going to be here at the end of the year. What do you say, over or under?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to take out the factor of load management, of guys resting, injuries. If Chris Paul and Danilo Gallinari are on this team for the maximum amount of time until they are traded, so basically until the trade deadline, I would say that the Thunder are going to win more than 32 games. I actually had them, I think I projected them to be a 35-win team. I think they're just far too talented. I think they're far too talented to lose a ton of games. They're far too talented to be like a bad Phoenix Suns team. But if, Billy Donovan and the Thunder decide to sit Chris Paul a lot, if they decide to sit Danilo Gallinari a lot, and if they trade them rather quickly, man, this team is pretty bad when that's all said and done.
We saw that in Dallas.
Yeah, and then if not only just those two, but if a guy like I mentioned, Dennis Schroeder or Nerlens Noel or whoever else is traded from this team, it's even that much more bare. Now, the Thunder, if they trade some of these players, they might have to take on like a expiring deal from a vet that could help them win games in the short term. So it's really hard to prognosticate, but I think anywhere from 32 to 35 is pretty good. I don't think that they're a minus 30 win team, let's just say.
In the Eastern Conference, as this roster is constructed,
is
this a playoff team?
It's a playoff team. I mean, you got a team like the Brooklyn Nets who, Kyrie Irving's already going crazy apparently, but you got a team
that's
like
going to blow up very quickly.
Yeah, you've got a team like that has a lot of talent, but people are already questioning 3 or 4 games into the season. Are they a playoff team? I think it's a little too early for that, but it does kind of paint the picture of how how bad the Eastern Conference is, or not bad. Let's just say average, because the Atlanta Hawks and Boomer Sooner Trae Young, who's playing at a great level right now. Who knows what the Atlanta Hawks are going to be able to do moving forward if they're able to sustain this. If they do, then they make the playoffs. And how crazy is that, considering how bad they've been? So I think with this roster, the Thunder are no doubt a playoff team in the Eastern Conference.
All right, and wrap it up. Tell our listeners how they can follow your work, because I'm telling you, I love following you. You do a great job. You are very unique in your coverage of the Thunder.
Well, thank you very much. It's all on Twitter, at Brady Does Sports, thefranchiseok.com. It's the website for 107.7 The Franchise. It's where I put all my Thunder content, articles, video, podcast-wise. We do, like, on thefranchiseok.com, you can go to the podcast tab and go to the podcast network tab, and you can see all of our podcasts right there, and you'll find OKC-82 that I do with not just Chisholm Holland, but my good friend and partner, Madison Morris, who does all the Thunder stuff with me as well. So it's just OKC-82 is the podcast. Type it in wherever you listen to your podcast. And I've said podcast now like 12 times. So I'm sorry, but wherever you listen to podcasts, just type in OKC-82 if you want to listen to more of my voice talking about the Thunder, and we'll have fun with it.
Hey, appreciate it, Brady. Great to see you today. Let's catch up again soon, and thanks for the time.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Todd. I appreciate it.
Brady Trantham of 107.7 The Franchise in Oklahoma City and co-host of OKC-82 Podcast has been our guest. We'll be back for our final segment right after this. Guys, let's move into our final segment. Let's talk golf. Let's talk briefly the NFL. We'll start with the NFL. The trade deadline has come and gone. Not a lot of big movement. The Dallas Cowboys tried to get the safety Adams from the Jets. The Jets wanted Jalen Ramsey-type compensation. Jerry and Stephen Jones said thanks, but no thanks. That would have been a great addition for the Cowboys. Here's what's mind-boggling to me. If you're the Cleveland Browns, how do you not make a move? How do you not try to put at least a thumb over the hole in the swimming pool that's leaking, and that's called that offensive line?
Yeah, it's awful.
How do you not go out and try to get a left tackle? If you're the Washington Redskins, Trent Williams has said, I'm not going to play for you anymore. So why do you continue to ask for the world when you're going to get nothing in return? And that brings me to my last point, and then you guys can have it away. The Cincinnati Bengals are the worst franchise in pro football. Everybody go, whoa, wait a minute. The Miami Dolphins. No, the Miami Dolphins at least have a plan of action. The Cincinnati Bengals have zero plan of action. God bless them. They finally moved on this week from Andy Dalton. What takes people so long in Cincinnati to move on from Marvin Lewis and from Andy Dalton? And then A.J. Green is a great trade piece for you. You don't think there's a lot of playoff teams or teams that are borderline making the playoffs that would have given up something for that guy, who, by the way, is an unrestricted free agent after this year? He is not going to re-sign with your franchise.
Not a chance.
So now they're going to hold on to him. He's going to play on a team that may hardly win a game, maybe one or two, and then he's going to walk away for nothing. I don't get some of these franchises in the NFL, which I wanted this to be our fan poll question of the week. Who would be a better football general manager in the NFL? KP, Casady, Josh, or Todd?
Right.
What do you think, Casady?
Oh, I mean, I got to say myself, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, I know it's not you and I. We've got to combine like 9 losses in fantasy football.
Well, that's just that's just all fantasy stuff, Todd. I try to share the love with everybody else in the league. Let some other people win some games. We got people that have never played fantasy football out here,
And
Todd.
one of them's leading our division.
Yeah, and so we want to make sure that they have a good first experience and don't beat them too bad.
I like the way you think.
Yeah.
You know who I'm going to vote for? KP.
That's a good vote.
I'm going to vote for you as being the best NFL GM.
Thank
but
you.
seriously, what's your
You're
thoughts
right.
on this trade deadline that really was a bust?
I barely have any. I feel like the NFL.
And do you understand some of these franchises that
No.
are downtrodden that don't do anything to get better?
I don't understand. And there's weird trades. I guess I don't understand the Dolphins. Like you said, they have this plan in action. Well, they traded away like a second-round pick to go get an injured Aqib Talib. How mad is he? He has to go from the Rams to the Dolphins. I mean, he's hurt right now. He may not even play this season, but like just on the morale side, that's not a fun move to get traded to that franchise. I get the NFL, they tried to play it up like it was about to be the NBA trade deadline, which is the most exciting trade deadline in sports. I would argue that the NFL's trades this year have been exciting in the fact that they've happened, because in the past it feels like there's never any big trades during the season, no block, but there's never been like a Jalen Ramsey type trade really that I can remember in recent years. So I mean, I like what the Cowboys did going and adding Michael Bennett. I mean, he's a nut job and a head case for sure, but yeah, bring him in, let him go sack the quarterback and be a nut on the field a little bit. And I mean, that defensive line for the Dallas Cowboys now, I mean, that is just full of who's.
They got some nice depth.
D-Law, they've got Quinn, and now they've got Michael Bennett in there. Tyrone Crawford when he's healthy. I mean, that's a force to be reckoned with, so I like that move and didn't have to give up too much for him. So, again, there wasn't just a lot of world-beater crazy moves. I mean, the Cardinals go get Kenyon Drake, the running back. They've got some injury at their depth right there. But again, like you said, Todd, teams like that are making moves, and then the Browns aren't making a move for an offensive lineman, I don't understand. So, yeah, kind of a dud of a trade deadline, if I'm being honest. That's kind of how I feel about it.
All right, let's move on to the world of golf. Tiger Woods, with his 82nd career PGA Tour victory.
Dang.
That equals Sam Snead for the most all-time on tour. Here was what was strange about it. Tiger Woods became the first player in history to open a final round with 3 straight holes over par, and win a golf tournament. I'm going to give you some numbers, and these are not compliments of Todd Miller or KP or anybody else. Josh probably could have come up with them, but we didn't give him the assignment. These are from ESPN. 800 times players have started an opening round with 3 straight holes over par since 2003. 76.2, the opening round stroke average of those 800 players. Woods shot 64, bettering the average by 12.2 strokes. 92% percentage of time players finish the round over par. Again, these are players that have opened up with 3 consecutive over par holes. 5% of the time players finish their round under par. 109th, the average tournament position after the opening round. Woods was tied for first. This was not the final round, as I said. It was the first round, okay? 6th number of players out of 800 who finished their opening round inside the top 10, who started their first round with 3 over par holes. 9.2, the average number of holes needed to get back to even par or better after starting with 3 consecutive holes over par. Of those who finished even par or better, Woods needed 4 holes to get back to even. And these are all from ESPN. 2.4, average number of birdies made in the opening round out of 800. Woods made 9 birdies.
Jeez.
16, the number of players out of 800 who finished inside the top 10 at the end of the week and won. Tiger Woods is the only player to win, having started a round with 3 consecutive over par holes. That's pretty good.
It's pretty good for 82 wins right there.
Yeah,
that's
a
interesting
cool
way to get 82.
Yes, that's a very cool
You like those
way
stats,
to tie
Casady?
it. I love that. I'm a big analytics guy.
Was that analytic enough for you?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, give me all those golf saber metrics. That's what I like to see, launch angle, and let's talk about
I still
spin
think the
rate
most impressive thing about Tiger Woods is he's playing with a basically brand new body, compliments of the surgery center.
Yes. Yeah, and had to put himself back together and relearn
physically,
how to...
I don't know how the man's even playing, let alone winning a golf tournament.
Right. It's amazing to me that he can actually just function as a human after all the surgeries that he's had. And, I mean, just living a normal life would have been a nice accomplishment for him to get back to, but he's now won multiple tournaments.
Probably a goal of his at first.
I'm sure at one point when he was, barely even able to move, he's had some serious stuff done. He had to come all the way back from, not being able to play golf for weeks and months at a time, and it's the hardest sport to miss any kind of time with, and he goes out there and has just always finds a way to kick it into that extra gear. And congratulations to him for tying Sam Snead with 82. That is a huge milestone, and nobody will ever come close to that, at least in any of our lifetimes.
Again, those stats compliments of ESPN. 800 players since 2003 have started a round, the first round, with 3 over par holes. 800, only one. Tiger Woods this past weekend has managed to come out from that hole and win the golf tournament. One other little bit of business, KP. As we do this podcast, Game 6 is about to commence of the World Series. Nationals won the first 2 games in Houston. Houston won the next 3 in Washington. Somebody in this podcast said Houston in 6. That's looking like a pretty good bet.
I gotta wave my hat on that one. That was me. I said before the playoffs started that Houston would dominate through the playoffs. I wouldn't say they've dominated because they've lost games, but if you've looked at the scores where they've won, they're dominating these wins. I mean, they're putting up runs like no other. So that's kind of what I thought would happen. I thought they would be too much for the Nationals. I did not think the series would go as it's gone, with the Nationals winning the first 2 games at Houston, then Houston going to Washington and winning 3 on the road. Just like they say,
giving
always
up 3 runs in the whole trip.
Oh, but yeah, by the way, and going to DC, and each game the Nationals only score 1 run, 3 runs over 3 games. That's incredible. So, like they say in all playoff series, it's not really a series until the home team wins. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause every series they always say it's not a series until the away team gets a victory. Well, in this series, the home team hasn't won a game yet. But
0 for 5.
I think that changes tonight. Unfortunately, sorry, Uncle Kerry. Sorry, Ethan. I think that the Astros pull it out tonight.
I'm still sticking with my Nationals in 7 pick. Look, I know they're big-time underdogs, and after losing 3 in a row, I don't know what kind of a performance we're going to get from the Nationals, but everyone will know by the time you listen to this if there is even going to be a Game 7. But
yeah, maybe I got
faith.
It shouldn't sound so cocky right now that it's done and over. It hasn't happened yet. There's still baseball to be played for sure. But before we get out of here, I got to give a quick story. Again, we talked about it before. I just shouted them out a second ago. My Uncle Kerry, my cousin Ethan, they're listeners of the podcast. They're also big DC Washington Nationals fans. They've been at every game so far. I've seen the pictures on Facebook. My Ethan has been the first person in line to get into every game.
That's awesome.
I'm sure you guys have seen this video that's gone viral already of the guy at the Nationals games that caught the home run. He had 2 beers in his hand and he catches the ball with his chest. Well, if you watch that replay, there's a kid a row behind him that reaches over and tries to catch that ball with his glove, and that was my cousin Ethan. So Ethan, I'm kind of glad that he didn't catch the ball, because the story was way cooler. A dude with 2 beers tried to catch it with his chest, which I've heard Budweiser's already reached out to him trying to endorse him.
Oh my gosh.
My uncle has a picture with him holding the ball, because my uncle sits right behind him and takes his camera to every game, so he's got some cool pictures on his Facebook.
How about bringing him on the podcast?
I bet you he's got a cool story. I promise you he can tell you some cool stories about this.
Do we need to get the cooler in touch with him?
I think I got a pretty good connect on this one. You got Terry Stotts. I got my uncle who goes to Nationals games. So
we'll give him
see.
a shout right after that Game 7 Nationals victory parade.
There we go. He'll be fired up.
By the way, as we record this, we also just found out that Max Scherzer is going to be cleared to pitch in Game 7 should the Nationals take Game 6. If Washington wins tonight, we're doing this on a Tuesday night, they will be 4-0. Correction. If they come back to win the World Series, they would be 4-0 on the road.
Yeah, insane.
No team in World Series history has gone 4-0
on the road. Wow. I believe that. This series has been nuts that way. I can't believe it, because the part of the World Series is how fun the home team is, how fun the home crowd is having, and not one time this whole series is the home crowd left with a victory.
And some of those have been just straight up, just
bludgeonings.
Yeah.
On both sides.
Yeah. I mean, blowouts, not even close. 2 of those 5 games so far, I mean, you could just turn it off after about the 6th inning and call it good.
You guys almost let me forget something. Shame on you. If my boy Josh hadn't come over here and hit me on the head, I would have forgot this. Our fan poll question of the week.
Yeah, the new one.
On Twitter, at VIBELAND Sports. What's the most impressive first-half feat in the NFL season? Is it A, the Saints going 5-0 without Drew Brees? Is it B, the 49ers 7-0 start? Or C, is it the Patriots defense outscoring their opponent's offense?
Yeah, say that one more time for the people in the back.
The Patriots defense outscoring their opponent's offense. Going into this week, which was week 8, the Patriots defense had scored 6 touchdowns. New England had given up 3 offensive touchdowns to the opponent.
And if the offense hadn't scored a single touchdown all season, the Patriots would still be 4-2-1.
That's
Casady,
unreal.
Say that again for the people in the back. The Patriots, if they went every game without their offense scoring a touchdown,
yes,
would have won 4 games this year.
They'd be 4-2-1, and not even they would have still had a tie. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, if Tom Brady and the offense just says, nah, It just stays on the sideline. We're good.
Yeah, we're going to chill
just
over
nails
here.
it every time.
Doesn't matter. They'd
Yeah.
still be leading the AFC East right now.
Okay, log on to our Twitter page at VIBELAND Sports and cast your vote for the VIBELAND fan poll question of the week. The most impressive feat in the first half of the NFL season. Is it the Saints not starting, but going 5-0 without Breeze? Is it the 49ers' unbeaten start, 7-0? Or is it New England's defense outscoring their opponent's offense in the first 8 games of the year? At VIBELAND Sports on Twitter and Instagram. On Facebook, it's VIBELAND Sports. Again, don't forget, don't miss a moment of your favorite podcast. At least we hope we are that. You can download and subscribe on Apple Podcast and Spotify. It's VIBELAND Sports. We're out of here, guys. Don't forget the bonus pod coming up, Casady, on Thursday with
Yes,
Terry
sir.
Stotts. And
Check it out. Make sure you subscribe. It'll drop right probably very early Thursday morning.
One more round of applause for Josh for getting Terry Stotts. All right. For Josh, since we've been talking about him, for Casady, for KP, I'm Todd. We'll see you again next week on another edition of VIBELAND Sports, a weekly presentation of VIBELAND Media.